Hello, everyone, and welcome to this spoiler review for Andor episode 11 here from the
Geek
Buddies
and Laura Kelly.
Hey! We're back again another week, and this time the full team is here. Laura Kelly is back to join us as we break down episode 11 of Andor, and of course, getting ready for that finale next week. Over turkey legs and stuffing, what madness is going to ensue? We shall find out. But certainly, episode 11, Daughter of Ferrix, letting us know that this is essentially like a wave in the ocean. This is the rear back before the wave comes crashing down, and we find out who lives and who dies, and what happens with all these characters we've gotten to know so well over the last 11 episodes so far, and 12 by the end of that finale. Let's introduce ourselves before we jump too deep into this, and this is a spoiler review. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies.
I am Michael Vogel. I'm a writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm a television actor and an animation writer where you can currently see some of our current work on Netflix right now. Strawberry Shortcake, Barry in the Big City, Season 2.
That's right. That's right. Vel is also on that. She's showing up in all the storylines. She's showing up in Barry in the Big City as well. Look, I have spent many times introducing Laura Kelly. Laura, you're officially a member of the Geek Buddy, so introduce yourself. Go ahead.
I get to introduce. Fine, that's fine. I'll do that. I'm Laura Kelly. I am at @shutup_Laura on Twitter, and I talk about Star Wars on the internet, sometimes with these guys, sometimes just with John, and a lot of times on my podcast, Force Toast, a Star Wars happy hour.
What's your most recent episode about? Force Toast Pod.
It's like that episode's like 2 or 3 weeks old now. We talked a lot about the Path of Deceit, which is one of the new High Republic Phase 1 books, which also has cults in it. Ooh. Star Wars is doing cool stuff with cults right now.
Nice.
But yeah, it was a very long episode because we also are recapping Andor. So I think we had 3 episodes to do. It was a lot.
That sounds like a lot for sure. Well, we are going to be recapping episode 11, so everybody strap into this one. Big shout out to carbonhealth.com, who continues to power and sponsor us here on the Geek Buddies into 2023. So you got any healthcare questions, concerns, or needs, please head over to carbonhealth.com and get checked out. Don't be Maarva. Don't wait till it's too late. Go get it checked out now, or download the app to get a dock in your pocket today. 100+ locations all over the country, 80+ locations in California alone. Look, they tried to get the doctor to come by more. She wouldn't do it, so I'm just putting it out there. Anyway, we're going to jump into all the storylines, break it down. There's about 5 of them that happen throughout the episode, so we'll break that all down. But first, I love to start off with general overall thoughts. So, Michael, please kick it off. What do you think about episode 11?
Well, it's funny. I mean, the rhythm of Andor is so interesting. Like, it was a great episode. I thought there was a lot of great stuff, but they kind of it's the same with Aldhani. It was the same with Narkina fight. Like, last week was so epic and huge and emotional, and so you sort of, like you were saying, like, this week you sort of pulled back a little bit. Because we are gearing up for what I think is going to be one hell of a finale. Like, this show definitely had its moments, particularly like Luthen and his ship, which was just amazing. Right. But a lot of this was just, okay, Maarva's death is the inciting incident that is leading us into this big finale, and just moving all the pieces around. It never ceases to amaze me. I said to my brother after we watched it, I looked at him, I was like, it is hilarious to me that the lesson that a lot of people took from the prequels was maybe a little bit less politics in Star Wars. Let's keep it simple. Good versus evil. That's what the kids want these days. Let's make it lightsabers and fun. And now here we are with Andor, where we are all like, well, this is the best Star Wars because it is very political. Like, it is all in, and I eat it up. I eat up every conversation that anybody has about the nitty-gritty of rebellions or the inner workings of the Empire, or where my finances were and why I'm in trouble. Like, I love it all. I'm into it.
You drink up its milkshake. That's sort of a fair point. Laura Kelly, your thoughts on episode 11 here of Andor. On the precipice of this finale, what did you think about this episode 11?
You know, I'm a little bit, I think, in the same boat as Michael. This episode kind of felt like coming off of a high. Episode 10 was just so action-packed. It was so phenomenal, and I couldn't help but be left wanting a little bit in episode 11. I found it just a little bit underwhelming. Okay. But I imagine, you're right. That's on purpose. They're setting us up for what is sure to be an explosive finale next week. and one that all of us Americans can use to avoid our families over Thanksgiving. So we're grateful for that, for Andor's schedule. It's awesome. This episode served up a lot of B2Emo all throughout, and I couldn't be happier. And more equally devastated by all of the B2Emo content we got. So I enjoyed that overall.
I feel like B2Emo is like the nicer brother of Chopper. Like all the good went to B2Emo, and all the evil sarcasm went to Chopper.
Oh my gosh,
that's the Thanksgiving table I want to see is B2Emo and Chopper just being like, pass me that fucking shit, you crybaby, and B2Emo is just like,
mashed potatoes. Shannon, thoughts on episode 11? What is your thoughts on episode 11 here, my man?
In the realm of twins, B2Emo is Arnold Schwarzenegger's Julian, two Choppers, Danny DeVito's Vincent. You know what? I really like this. I mean, coming off the high of episode 10, I still thought this one was firing on all cylinders, and I really thought it. You got a sense of how the Empire is viewed, not just by our main characters, especially by the Narkinians. And I thought we got some really good acting here from Diego Luna and Duncan Powell in Andor and Melshi, and also from Stellan Skarsgård. I mean, it's not like Stellan Skarsgård hasn't been doing a fantastic job, but when he is confronted with a situation of, oh no, I thought I had this under control, maybe I don't, which also kind of mirrors what Mon Mothma is going through with her conversation with Vel of, I thought I had this under control, I don't, and now I've been forced into a decision that I don't want to make. I just super enjoyed everything from top to bottom, and B2Emo's the way the people of Ferrix, or at least the ones that we're exposed to, the way they treat droids. Yeah. Brasso's like, if you want a moment, I'll leave you alone. We can leave you alone. Right. It is just run so counterintuitively to the way the rest of the galaxy treats a droid, which I thought was fascinating and heartbreaking.
Yeah. When's the last time a droid convinced you to spend the night there at a place just so they can feel better about it in the morning? Yeah, I mean, just incredible stuff for sure. Fun stuff. I liked this episode, but as I said, it's the chill episode. It's the rear back for what we're gonna get next week. But I like that they laid the groundwork here. It wasn't without its moments. Certainly the passing of Maarva, certainly the situations you guys mentioned with B2Emo, certainly more with Luthen and Saw. That philosophical battle that's happening between those two guys. I feel like Luthen is never more real than he is when he's with Saw. Like everywhere else, he's putting on fronts, putting on faces. But it feels like with Saw, there's vulnerability here. Now, he might be playing him, but to me, it feels like he's the one person that he can actually be honest with and pull a gun out or a blaster on, by the way, and get away with it. So, I mean, there's a lot here that happened throughout, but there's still those moments with Bix which were harrowing. There's still Syril going down the incel tunnel now even faster. There's still more to explore here for sure.
There's also Cyril's mom's bedhead, which could be a whole Geek Buddies episode in and of itself.
I got jokes. Do I need to hold on to them?
Yes, hold on.
Keep them.
And we got a badass new ship as well, and a Luthen ship, which someone tweeted at me a perfect description for. Darth Hall, absolutely, because it was icing things. It's the first thought I had as soon as those things stuck out and were spinning around. I'm like, that's a double lightsaber in space. So yeah.
A friend of mine who is not a big fan of the prequels texted me, but he is a big fan of Andor. He texted me, he said, when Luthen's ship took off, I was alone in my apartment and said out loud, "Now that's pod racing," and then I punched myself in the face.
Oh.
That is great. But let's start with Andor's storyline here. We begin on Andor and Melshi literally clinging to freedom and to life on this rock face. And I've been watching some recent adventure shows that are on Disney Plus and other channels. And this idea of free climb, it's insane what people do and take their lives at risk. But seeing them do this in this desperate situation, but seeing the camaraderie between him and Melshi, tell me that they're leaving, tell me that they're gone, tell me this, all these kinds of things, and him encouraging Andor encouraging Melshi that he can get up there. you see that they're developing this friendship, which of course will bear fruit as we see them again in Rogue One. They're watching these two creatures, these Narkinian creatures there, and they spot a quad jumper. Melshi takes off and starts the escape after having this back and forth with Cassian, as if, like, we're gonna go. We can beat him. And the aliens, of course, are not, so it's no big deal to them. And they launch this net trap on both of them. I know this may be sacrilegious to say, it felt a little bit like Star Trek, a little bit in that moment, but that's just me. But we see the creatures having Narkinian conversations. We hear the main guy talking to his buddy Freedy, talking about how much these two might fetch, talking about, it's always the Empire. It's always the Empire. But then talking about how the water's been spoiled because of the Empire. They don't eat the way they used to anymore with the feasts that they used to have because of the Empire. But then they let them go. They take the net off. I guess they realize that they are actually prisoners, which is a great escape for Cassian and Melshi. And then Cassian says, we want to go to Niamos. And they all take off on the quad jumper. Andor lands on Niamos, goes into the room where he was before he was imprisoned. I can't remember the name of the woman he was with, but someone else some other family is there, but he has snuck in there. And before he gets caught, he finds his case with his equipment, and Nemik's manifesto turns on for just a second, just to remind us that it's still there in his possession. And he sees that he's got his credits and his money, and he takes off before that family can wake up. We cut to him radioing into Zanwan, and he's surprised to hear Cassian's voice. And he says he wants to get a message to Maarva and tell her I'm okay and I'm fine, everything's cool. And Zanwan has to be the one to tell him that Maarva has passed, and we'll get to that passing fully as we get onto the Ferrix stuff. There's great acting here, in my opinion, from Diego Luna. Great facial acting here. They pull away from him to let him stand by the phone as we see Melshi in the distance. And then we cut to him coming out onto the pier there next to Melshi. Melshi wants to know if everything's okay. He says, yeah, everything is fine. But Melshi says they need to split up. They need to tell people what's happening back there. They need to let people know so they can be aware about what's happening. So already getting that rebellious streak within Melshi. He suggests that they split up. One of them, so that at least one of them can make it, because they don't know how many people actually made it off that penal colony there on Narkina 5. And he says people have to know what is happening here, and they split up there after a hug, and we get a close-up of Cassian's face, and he's clearly very emotional, still processing the death of Maarva. So, Mike, thoughts on how we started this story, how the storyline rather went throughout the entire episode?
I really liked how it kind of literally starts with them actually like hanging by a thread. It really kind of like doubles down on just how far Cassian has fallen through all of this and how hard it is. Love practical alien effects. It's like there's something about practical alien effects. They never look as real or as seamless as like a CG thing where you can really nail everything, but somehow the fact that it's real just makes it cooler. So having these giant plastic prosthetic aliens walking around, I like that they were just good guys. I think that, like Shannon was saying on Ferrix with Brasso's kind of just being a good guy to B2. We're so used, the Empire has trained everyone in a galaxy far, far away and trained us to not trust anybody and that everyone is out to get you. But I think part of what makes the rebellion, the Rebel Alliance work is that there are actually still good people out there. Yeah. So I love that they had this moment where you set up this whole, we've got to steal this ship, we got to get away, and then the guys catch them in the net, and there's this whole moment, and the guy's got a fucking sword for a hand, and like it's a whole thing, it's this whole setup, and you're like, oh, how are they going to get out of this one? And then it's like, well, these are just good guys. Where you want to go? You want to go to Space Miami? I'll take you to Space Miami. I did love when he went back to, Niamos? When he went back to Niamos. Yeah. And went to the hotel room and got the thing. I looked at my brother and I'm like, you're going to tell me that whole time he was on prison, housekeeping didn't find that money? And my brother looks at me and he goes, man, it's not the Four Seasons. And I was like, fair enough. I don't think that thing was that well hidden, but I like that. I like that Nemik. I like that they're keeping the whole thing with Nemik's manifesto alive. I was wondering if that was just going to go away, but I like that we saw it there. I'm going to be interested to see where that goes. And then just like heartbreaking. I mean, I think so much of this episode is about sacrifice. Luthen last week had that amazing speech about what he sacrificed. And here, the whole conversation is, are they literally going to sacrifice 30 men? Mon Mothma is talking about what she sacrificed. And then you have Andor here who, like, literally, it's so heartbreaking because he's like, oh, tell Maarva I'm okay. When he said she would be proud of me.
Yeah.
That's the one that got me. Because that was it wasn't just a, hey, tell her I'm okay. I got money. I'm going to come get her. Like, there's sort of the nuts and bolts of, hey, I got to come find you. Don't worry. But tell her she would be proud of me. And I think that's really telling because it shows that he understands that what he did on Narkina 5 was big. Like with Aldhani, he was hired. He was a mercenary. He was in a tough spot. He wanted to get the money and get out. He did the right thing. He did right by anybody. Like, taking care of Skeen, like he did better than I think Vel or anybody realized he did for them. Yeah. But he still just took his money and ran. And Narkina 5, it was self-serving. He wanted to escape there too, but just him saying she would be proud of me means a little bit that he's kind of proud of himself. He knows he did something that was for more than just him.
He led a rebellion. That's the big,
he led a rebellion. Yeah. And I thought that was really sweet. And then it was interesting to me, like, he gave Melshi that blaster. He didn't give him any of his money. Like, when they split up, I was like, he's still like, I was like, all right, like he's like, hey, look out for yourself, buddy. Take this blaster.
You know how long we've been friends, Mike. Latino don't surrender his money easily, man. I'm just saying. I
will tell everybody. I will tell everybody listening to this podcast that it is a very true thing that Rocha just said. He does not part with his money easily. That is true.
I mean, I get it.
So yeah, look, and again, like, I mean, kind of what Laura was saying, like, I don't think that there was any watershed moment here for Cassian. I don't think that this was a huge episode. A lot of this was just moving him off planet, getting his money, his stuff, getting the manifesto back, probably most importantly, for in the long term for the story, and him getting the information about Maarva, which is going to send him straight back to Ferrix in the next episode. So there was a lot of moving pieces around, but I thought, to your point, like, I thought he did some really nice work, and there were some really subtle, nice moments with his story.
Yeah, it feels like Hitchcock, 39 Steps Hitchcock. It starts at the theater and it's going to end at the theater. And it feels like it started at Ferrix and it's going to end on Ferrix this season at least. Laura, your thoughts overall on how they handled the Andor storyline here? Arguably kind of one of the smaller storylines in this particular episode. How did you think everything went down with him in this episode?
It definitely was one of the smaller storylines, I think. And I think Michael mentioned sacrifice. And one of the things that really stuck out to me in this part of the story in particular was, I mean, these two Narkinians talking about what the Empire has done to exploit their world. And it's so sad, but that's what the Empire does. Like, they come in, they exploit the world, they take what they want, and they don't care about the consequences that they leave the natives with. And the fact that these two guys are now struggling to, like, fish, I was like, oh, just that little, like, moment, this sort of, like, we see again in this show a lot, these sort of more down to earth moments. We see the ordinary people on the ground and how this war is affecting them and how the Empire is affecting them. And I like that they continue to bring those little storylines into this show. I actually didn't catch that, like, when they get to Niamos, that he's not just stealing. I thought Cassian was just stealing from these rich people at this really nice hotel. I did not even make the connection that he was just taking back his own money. I'm like, damn, these people have a lot of money. They shouldn't just leave that laying around for thieves. But man, so thank you for informing me of that. But I mean, kind of on the same note of the Empire coming in and destroying, like, we saw that resort town before Cassian escaped. And when we see it now, it's completely deserted. And there's clearly been a lot of, there's been a lot of changes in the galaxy, thanks to what happened in Aldhani, or it's the off season and all the snowbirds have left. It's with one of the two, honestly. But I think that there's one thing about this sort of goodbye scene between Cassian and Melshi that stuck out with me, and not just the fact that he's on a beach and it sort of feels like the ending of Rogue One. He's looking out at the bright light coming in from the sun. And I think it's sort of meant to be the end of the Cassian Andor that we've come to know in these first episodes, or first 11 episodes. I think we're going to see a very different Cassian probably in episode 12 and then going on into season 2. A little bit more of the Cassian that we know probably from Rogue One. Yeah, that's, I think, all I have to add on that part.
Okay. All right, Shannon, your thoughts on this? Have you ever clung for dear life on a rock face? Like, what did you think about all of this with Andor here throughout this episode?
Metaphorically, every day I'm clinging to a rock face. As one who has done a little bit of climbing, not nearly at that height. Like, looking at the fact that neither one of them, have shoes on, and you see just how torn up Cassian's feet are, and with Melshi saying, like, I can't feel my hands, like what we're led to believe is that they have been there for a minute, and that they are staying there because if they climb up, the patrol ships are going to spot them. And just the bond, as Mike and Laura already referenced, that is forming between Cassian and Melshi. I mean, it gives it gives us the history that will then lead us to Rogue One, despite the fact that they don't do a ton together in that movie. It just gives that movie more flavor in that there is a history between the characters. I love when they got down to the Narkinians, as Vogel said already. I mean, do they look as realistic as, say, a CG creation? No, but the fact that they do look tactile and that you can touch them, that does give an element of that original trilogy vibe. I don't know what those nets were made from. It looked like some sort of organic matter that when it came off them, they were wet. So I love industrious prop making. So looking at that, I'm kind of like, okay, that is super gross. It kind of reminds me of Shelob's webs from Return of the King.
Ooh, good.
I'm gonna go with netting, sort of organic webbing than anything else. But you find these. I mean, aside from the fact that these two Narkinians are just good beings, you find unlikely allies when you have a common enemy. That you have these two people that have been affected by the Empire's presence. You have people that were forcibly put in this structure that the Empire has constructed. And so the moment that sort of light bulb comes on, I was like, oh, okay. Oh, you want to go? Let's go. I love the rickety nature of that quad jumper. The fact that there were panels rattling on the side. I'm like, that's such a great detail that maybe not everyone picks up on, but the combination of the engines sort of firing intermittently and these rickety panels, and like you get a sense. I mean, one, it's funny, but you also get a sense of what their lives are like now that the Empire has intruded on them. As soon as they go back to Space Miami Vice, you have those two sort of space pelicans duking it out on the deck.
Blue ones?
Yeah. I mean, it is early. I mean, you get the sense that this is probably very, very early in the morning, hence those two aliens asleep in the bed. But that's the exact thought I had as well. Like, oh, this is sort of a low rent Vegas resort where the housekeepers are not that concerned with checking everything. Hence this entire, trunk of goods has remained untouched. And then, we get that great scene of Cassian's ability, or rather Diego Luna's ability, to play his cards close to the vest, despite all of the sort of emotional turmoil that is happening. It's really, really great. And, we get a little bit of a forecast that we see in Rogue One, in that he does not truly explode until in the wake of sort of the abandoned assassination attempt of Galen Erso. That this is a guy who has learned to rely on himself, and it's only when he's really, really pushed that he's going to let you know how he feels. So I thought the whole sequence was great.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, we wonder what's on there because it's going to leave that kind of residue on your face and on your hair. That's some tough organic material, certainly. I don't know how you guys wash that off in that ship.
You guys can wonder. I know what that is.
I know what I wrote in my notes. I'm not going to repeat it.
Right. Oh my God. Let's move on to our next story. Well, actually, let's take a break and we're going to move on to our next story. But I will say this. I agree. Diego does a fantastic job. But I also think Cassian wants to be alone to process this. So he is more than happy to agree with Melshi going off and doing whatever, given the blaster. I don't know if he has a weapon himself. Does he have 2 different blasters? I don't know.
I think there were 2 guns in the safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if there were. So at least he's protected in that way. But I think he also kind of wants to process this on his own, which may be an element of the finale next week. We shall see. Well, let's take a quick break. We'll jump into our next storyline right after this. That's good. That's good. Is this right? What, I can't get us closer. I don't know why. There we go. Okay, there it is.
Oh, I feel so much closer to you now.
Aww.
Let's move on to Ferrix. A lot of stuff happened on Ferrix here, and let's fully address this as we go along too. And in your thoughts and comments to all 3 of you, Maarva has officially passed. We get allusions to it in the darkness. I think we're getting. I think that might be B2Emo's point of view that we're getting, like hearing the noises of these women talking about her passing and saying that she has gone on. Brasso is consoling B2Emo as the daughters of Ferrix are taking care of Maarva's stuff and preparing her body for the funeral, which we find out later how that goes down. B2Emo wants to go with Brasso, but he talks him into staying to help the daughters of Ferrix. Cinta is watching, working at the cafe right across the street, but so is Korv, an Empire spy, who asks Cinta about it. She says, I just started here, don't know anything about this person, and what have you. So Korv wants updates from his people who are surveilling the situation. Later we go, and it's nighttime. Brasso is just walking around inside the place there, and he is talking to B2Emo. Maarva has been, we hear about Maarva being placed in the stone. B2Emo doesn't want to accept that she's gone and convinces Brasso to stay one night with him after Brasso offers to take B2Emo with him to his place. And then we cut to Bix, who is having these horrible PTSD flashbacks of what that doctor did to her. She's in some sort of prison. An Empire guy walks in and says, come with me, Bix. And she is leaning on him, stumbling down the hallway. They take her into another room. I wrote here, she is absolutely wrecked, man. They want to know about Anton Krieger, this person who we've never seen and may never see, but shows up in a holographic image there. Says the guy who is running this interrogation says they'll call back Dr. Gorst if she doesn't tell them the truth. They want to know if this is the man that she introduced to Cassian. Is this Axis in essence? And Bix doesn't respond, kind of gulps, kind of draws in the breath, and starts to maybe chant something, which I don't know what that is. And then we, of course, cut to Deidre, who's getting an update on Maarva's death from Tigo. Tigo says Maarva rates a big send-off. They want to close Rick's road. They are building a list of grievances. Deidre wants the funeral to happen on Ferrix, says to keep it small with limited numbers. She wants to put them, in essence, in a box while they stand back and watch and wait for Cassian to show up. And we hear that the funeral will take 2 days and that the dead, according to tradition, are bricked and put into a wall so that they remain as part of the foundation of Ferrix, which I think is incredibly sweet. Laura, I go to you. A lot happened on Ferrix here and some tough situations, tough moments, and of course your thoughts on how they handled the passing of Maarva.
Well, I think this is an unusual title for this episode, Daughter of Ferrix. I mean, seeing that, I anticipated a lot of Maarva in this episode, only to find that she died off screen. And we sort of get some mentions of her in the beginning. We get a little bit at the end, not a whole lot in the middle. She kind of spiritually hovers over this episode, I suppose, but it just seemed like an unusual title for somebody who ends up dying off screen. Really, with all of this B2Emo stuff is really what hooked me in these Maarva scenes. I mean, the fact that we do open on his point of view, and when he says, I don't want to be alone, I want Maarva, it didn't occur to me that what we're seeing is basically like B2 is like an equivalent of like a 6-year-old who just like does not understand how to process death. I mean, a droid who knows how to process a lot of things, but he can't grasp onto that. And it is just so devastating. And we get a couple of them throughout the episode, but they're mechanical whimpers is how they're described in the captions. And it's just so cute and so sad. The stuff with Bix was really interesting because we have not gotten a ton of Adria Arjona on screen. She just hasn't had a ton of screen time, especially in this like latter half of the series. But when she does, she makes really good use of it. And she doesn't really speak much in this, you know, in this scene, but you can still see every thought, every emotion, the wheels turning on her face. It's a lot of facial acting for her in this episode, I think. And you know, asking herself, do I lie to these people and tell them that Krieger is the one they're looking for? Or do I assume that whatever I tell them, they're going to kill me anyway? I mean, at that point, you would think that that torture would have probably put her over the edge, and it looks like it's close. So it's real sad.
Yeah. And I wonder if they haven't been consistently doing it, because she looks like she has been through the ringer, and it feels like they've come back a few times to get information from her, which is really harrowing to see for sure. Shannon, your thoughts on how they handled Maarva's passing, but also everything that happens here on Ferrix, and Deidre setting up the funeral here to catch Andor.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with Laura. For such a prominent character as Maarva was, the off-screen death, you know, that was a choice. That was a way to go. That was a way to do it. The fact that we were seeing everything through the lens of B2, I think helped that choice. The fact that there was, I mean, I don't know if B2 was charging or if it was just sort of this grief filter that the droid had on, but the moment, again, the way the Brasso speaks to B2, like in this very sympathetic tone, runs so counterintuitive to a lot of what we have seen, the way the rest of the Star Wars universe treats droids. I mean, it's not necessarily that they're mean, they're just a thing. They're an appliance. And the way that Brasso connects and you see this sympathetic tone that he has, really great stuff. And the work of Dave Chapman, who is the voice of B2, as well as all of the audio mixers, you've really come up with a really compelling character. I mean, even the way that B2's head sort of, you know, retracts, it's almost like a kid peeking out. And to the, you know, 6-year-old comparison that you had made, I think that really is very effective. Over to the Bic stuff. I mean, yeah, that would be my guess, is that whatever Dr. Gorse did to her the first time, he has done multiple times and has probably ratcheted it up. Because who knows, you know, they don't know her willpower. They're trying to get answers. And a lot of times interrogation doesn't always produce honesty. Right. So the best way to try to get the most accurate answer is to do things repeatedly. And you can see that moment in her face where she's just like, if I say it's Krieger, does this stop? If I say it's Krieger, does it help? I might be hurting more than I'm helping right now. You know, she's really in an unwinnable position, and going to sort of the culture of Ferrix, that's what they do with their dead, is that they're cremated essentially, and their ashes are mixed in with mortar. I mean, there's something really beautiful about that, that the foundations of their society are literally and figuratively their ancestors. So, you know, I imagine that what we're going to get in the next episode is going to be pretty big, because at this point, now that we've seen the Luthen, the space sequence, I believe we've seen everything that was in the marketing. It seems like we haven't seen anything that's in the finale.
Yeah, in the trailer. Yeah, good point. Michael, your thoughts on everything that happened on Ferrix and on Deidre's plans here to set up this funeral to essentially catch the mouse that is Cassian?
I mean, first of all, I mean, Star Wars got a problem with droids. One day they're gonna have to make it right. I don't know. Like, it is like because Shannon's right. Like, droids are things, and so many people treat them like, oh, it's just a droid. But like, clearly, they're not just a thing. Like, they are second-class citizens, and B2 really just doubled down on all of it. I really love, this is such a small thing, but it really just struck me, is that as much as Brasso is kind of treating him like a person, like, do you want to be alone, to say goodbye, whatever, somebody just used him as a fucking coffee table and put their coffee on top of him.
Fair point.
Like, The way that like he's shaking with everything that's going on and the coffee falls, you're like, some motherfucker came in and was like, well, we gotta clean up all the Maarva shit and just put it on his head. And like, as he's like sitting there mourning, and you're like, God damn, like that is some, like it really, it hit me, man.
Is he not waking up? Are you sure he's not waking up?
Like it just really hit me. Like they really did a great job of just, it's so sad and it's so sweet.
Yeah.
And I agree with what Shannon and Laura said about the title of the episode, but I also do love, and I'm interested to see how it kind of carries over in the next one, that, look, not everybody can be Viserys in House of the Dragon and hold on until they're the Crypt Keeper. Like, we saw Maarva getting worse every episode. like we saw...
Shout out to the Chappelle sketch shit, by the way.
You know, like, we saw Maarva getting worse and worse, and... for my money, like, I don't need to see her die. And I think that, like Shannon said, seeing B2's response to it was so much. And then the fact that her funeral and her death is the thing that is literally bringing the entire cast together for this finale, even though we didn't see it, and she is not even present in this episode, her death still sort of is driving everybody towards this thing that is going to send Cassian, we presume, into the rebellion and everything else. So she's very present in the episode, even though she's not in the episode. Yeah. I am with you guys on the brick thing. Like, they said that, and I'm like, that's how I want to go. I was just in Denver last weekend visiting my sister, and we were going to see some friends, and we drove past a graveyard, and it was like, you know, a chain link fence and a bunch of tombstones and whatever. And I was like, I don't know. And then they were like, I was like, yeah. Make me a brick and build your house with me. That's what I want. I'm in.
Build me up.
Build me up. Bix, man, she looked rough. She looked like how I felt the day after Halloween. Like, it was it was intense. I do think, to your point, I think we are going to see Anton Krieger next week. I think that as much as a lot of the action is going to take place around Ferrix, they have really built up this decision about whether or not we sacrifice Krieger, this attack that Krieger is planning, how it's going to go down, that I think that has to be a part of what happens, what Saw Gerrera decides to do, how, like, is there a do we tip Krieger off? Do we let Krieger go in, but then come in and like double cross the Empire? Like, there's a lot of options for that. So I think the fact that they showed him on the holo screen to Bix, I think we are gonna see him in person next week, I would guess. Yeah. The one thing we didn't talk about, and I loved it, I'm obsessed with Cinta. Obsessed with Cinta. I think she is a cool cucumber. I want to see I want to see her in more shit. I want to see her in the rebellion. I also love that she is the rebel spy, and she is literally in the room with the Imperial spy. Yeah. And the Imperial spy has no idea he is in the room with the rebel spy, and the rebel spy is like, bitch, I clocked you last week. Like, I know who you are. I know what's going on, and he has no clue, which I thought was absolutely great. So yeah, all the stuff on Ferrix, really, I just like the people of Ferrix. They've done such a good job, you know, to Shannon's point about the way that Brazos is treating B2, but like from day one, like from the very first few episodes, they established Ferrix as a place that was very blue collar, working class part of the Star Wars galaxy, but where everybody kind of looked out for everybody. Every time we've seen it, from Brasso's covering for Cassian to the way they all hit things and drum things to let people know that something's going down, to Bix and Brassos being there for Maarva, like, and in big ways and little ways, they've just shown that the people of Ferrix are really there looking out for each other. Yeah. So it's going to be, I think, very satisfying when we see the people of Ferrix rise up against the Empire, which is what I am assuming is going to happen next week.
Yeah. I got feelings that Bix is going to take care of business next week. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I don't know if Deidre is going to be long for the world of Andor. I'm just throwing it out there.
How badly do you want to see her grab that headset and put it on Gorst? Just be
on I want to see her put it on Deidre. That's who commanded it to happen, not Gorst. Gorst is just a tool. She's the one that made it happen. So I'd like to see that happen. But
yeah, except I want Deidre to make it into season 2 because I'll take more hating Deidre for a long time.
Yeah, I think Deidre makes it out of season 1. Definitely.
Okay. I mean, we're jumping multiple years next season, like throughout the season. So I don't know if she's going to remain the big bad through into the second season, but we'll see. We'll see for sure. Let me ask you guys one more question before we move on from Ferrix. Seen some people speculating online about this, that they may have faked her death to cause the Empire to set this whole thing up so that when Andor shows up, she's actually still alive and as a rebel finds a way to fight in this thing with Andor in this match. What would be your reaction? I'm not gonna say she's popping out of the coffin and shit.
That's literally what I literally pictured her popping out with 2 guns, be like.
But see, I saw Leslie Nielsen from Dracula Dead and loving it. Get up in the coffin.
I'll put you motherfuckers in a wall. Bam! What do you guys think about this whole? Like, do you even give any credence to this, or do you think this is
zero?
Okay, no.
I don't see what the point. Like in that scene at the beginning, who are they trying to fool?
Yeah.
Like that's a dead
Maybe
body.
the Empire watching
that they
them.
got.
Well, also it's just like none of them even know where Cassian is.
It's true.
So to kind of be like, hey guys, here's the skinny. Maarva, pretend you're dead to get Cassian here so that they don't even know really, aside from like the people that are in the hotel like Bix, like they don't really know that the Empire is even looking for Cassian. Half of them just blame Cassian because the Empire is there now, but like the idea that there's a big concerted plan and that this was what they came up with is like that's a bit of a stretch.
Laura, any thoughts on this?
I don't know about that. I think I think that it was all too genuine with the scenes with B2, and I don't know. I think it's just I think a lot of the show is what you see is what you get. I think Tony Gilroy sort of made that pretty clear in some of the interviews that he's done, and so I doubt that there's any kind of conspiracy like that going on.
Okay, fair enough.
No, the visual of Fiona Shaw busting through a wall with a bunch of brick armor.
Come on, man.
Fantastic.
I'd watch that show though, honestly.
It's more of a dance party, story more of a your thoughts, Laura, do you think in any way does Deidre make it out of season 1?
Yeah, I think she does. I think she's going to survive it because I actually wonder, we can get into predictions I guess later. Maybe I don't want to get too much into it now, but I think she's going to survive.
Okay. All right. Let's take a break. We'll jump into the next storyline right after this. Sounds like when you pull that one out. Let's move on to Luthen. We see Clay working on something here, working on some kind of thing there in the shop as Vel hovers around the front. Clay lets her in, tries to speak in code to her. Vel's not having none of that nonsense. She's like, where the hell is Luthen? Let me know right now. Vel tells Clay that Maarva is dead and that she is headed to Ferrix to reunite with Cinta, but also to wait for Cassian. Clay says that she will tell Luthen. We cut to Luthen, who is going to visit Saw. He is searched by 2 tubes. Saw now wants in for the Spellhouse Station caper that Anton Grieger was pitched to him last episode by Luthen. Luthen says no, and he tells him about ISB's plans for Krieger. Saw confronts him about his decision, and he starts to get paranoid. He's like, well, you might have someone on my staff. Who is he? What's his name? And he knows he has someone inside that and he also knows that he has someone in the ISB that he is protecting, which is why he is willing to make this decision. Luthen tricks 2 tubes into getting close to him after Saw is like spinning off into his paranoia, pulls a blaster on him, makes Saw listen to him about what is going on here, about how if he was working with ISB, there's no way he would tell him about the situation. He would just let him go die and all that. So Saw eventually agrees, and then in my opinion, calls Luthen out on his bullshit, talking about how, what if it was me? Would you let them kill me? And Luthen counters saying, hey, the decision I've told you, I respect you enough to tell you, you can do what you want with that information. I trust you to do the right thing, but the decision is yours. Kind of an interesting turn there. Clay, and then we cut to later. Luthen is back on his ship. Clay calls in, and they're talking in code about the peace and about the buyers and how many people are interested. She tells him that he should not visit the piece with the other buyers, essentially implying don't go to the funeral because a lot of people are going to be there. And she is imagining, I imagine she's thinking the Empire will be there as well. They lose contact as Luthen is being followed by a Segra Milo Imperial patrol, commanded by a guy named Elk. The person named radios over to Luthen. Elk radios over Luthen, and there's a great tension-filled back and forth between them as they play this game of cat and mouse with each other. And then Luthen buys enough time to power up the countermeasures on his ship, blows up their tractor beam in one of the best special effects we've had so far in the series. And then Elk sends out his TIE fighters, and Luthen, piece by piece, takes them out, then pulls out the Darth Maul laser beams, the red laser beams, and slices up the last 2 TIE fighters, and then hits that hyperspace out of there, leaving Elk alone in space with egg on his face. Shannon, thoughts on this whole thing with Luthen and Saw, Clea and Vel, and then also this encounter with the Empire here at the end of his storyline in this episode?
I mean, the Vel-Clea dynamic, which I imagine this is probably the last we've seen of it, but having someone who is done with all of the games versus someone who is a true believer and is like, no, we have rules for a reason. This is why we are doing them. I really hope Clea, I think Deidre makes it to season 2. I think there's a case to be made that Luthen doesn't. And if he doesn't, which I think would be a shame because Stellan Skarsgård is fantastic, I really love Clea. Like, I would love to see her take a more prominent role in this because she, I imagine, is like, she's like Senta. I mean, she's going to do what it takes to get things done. So really fantastic scene there. I mean, like, even as she's kind of fake showing her pieces and relics, is like, you're breaking all the rules right now. This is not how we do it. Like, I thought that was just a really, really great sequence. The moment that Saw says, I'm in on this raid, but I'm not taking any orders, you get the smallest glimpse of an oh shit on Luthen's face of he's already sacrificing these guys so he doesn't lose his Imperial contact. So knowing now that he might lose Saw Gerrera as well, Saw and his guys, it's like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And it's interesting that you said that like Saw calls Luthen out on his bullshit because Saw calls him out, but at the same time, at the end, Saw agrees. That he's just like, yeah, you're right. This is for the greater good.
You just,
that's what Saw says. He says for the greater good. And then Luthen says, call it what you want. And then he says, let's call it war. And these are the things that have to be, these are the decisions that have to be made.
I just think he's scoffing him. Scoffing it when he says for the greater good. I think he's scoffing at him. Oh boy. For his decision.
Me. No. I think that's what he means. But I mean, I love the moment where Luthen basically tries to sell 2 tubes down the river. He's like, it was tubes. This guy, he gives me everything. What the fuck? How did I get involved in this? Really, really great scene. And then that, again, for a series that has been a Star Wars series that has been relatively light on action, the action that they do give us is it's so good. I mean, the way that Luthen has this ship that can be presumed as somewhat unassuming, inside all of the stuff that he has is top of the line. I mean, it's Imperial Plus that he's able to get a cloned ID like that with his droid. And the fact that Luthen is really smart and he's like, okay, here's my scenario. Here's what I can do to delay this decision, and this decision. The fact that his countermeasures are essentially just shrapnel being propelled at a dish, and you see it just shred it. I mean, awesome. And the moment that the tractor beam, the signal is cut, and he's able to go in and just wipe those TIE fighters out. I mean, it is more Star Wars apropos for the Darth Maul comparison. I saw the Iron Man from the first Avengers with that red beam that he have. I'm like, to me, that's the Iron Man laser cutter. But the whole sequence was just awesome. And again, as you said, John, the egg on the Imperial officer's face that this little hall jumper got away. When we have, I mean, the design of that Imperial ship was, I think that's a new design.
I think so, yeah.
Really, really cool. But then again, just the expression on that guy's face of how did he do that? Just the whole sequence, top to bottom, really, really great.
Yeah, maybe a little foreshadowing of what the rebellion's going to do to the Empire overall by the time this is over. Mike, your thoughts on all of this? Judging from your noises, you agree with Shannon's interpretation of Saw's saying for the greater good. But yeah, please go ahead.
Well, first of all, Vel, I like Vel a lot as a character. Vel gets under my skin. Like, girl, get it the fuck together. This is the goddamn rebellion. Like, she is just doing what she wants. Like, she's like the quintessential rich kid. Like, which is great. Like, it's great that they've built this character because you have this person who is clearly good at what she does. Like, she does a great job in the moment on Aldhani. Like, she's great in the situation, but there is this level of entitlement that she has that really is just like, ugh. So when she goes into Clea and you're like, Clea's like, we are not supposed to do it this way, bitch. And she is like, I don't care. And it's like, it's great because the two of them, it's like, it is a immovable object meeting an unstoppable force. And the two of them just slamming together. It's just a great, great scene. Look, Luthen going to Saw, it's amazing because Shannon's right. Like, Luthen doesn't want to give up Saw Gerrera. Look, I don't think he wants to give up Krieger either, but like, this is just the hand he's been dealt, and it's a shitty situation. But with Saw, I love that there's a moment where he doesn't want to come clean on everything. Like, he doesn't want to give everything away. He's like, maybe it's not a good idea. It's too late. It's too late. Like, he tries to just get out of it, and Saw keeps pushing and pushing to the point where he has to come clean on it. And literally, I was watching the scene and I'm like, this might as well be last week's Geek Buddies where John and I were arguing about what Luthen said. Like, Luthen was like, look, what do you want me to do? Like, I agree, it's shitty, but what do you want? And you see how smart Saw is because Saw does put two and two together. He's like, oh, you have a spy and you don't want to give him up. And Saw pulls the Rocha. Saw pulls the Rocha and says, this is some fucked up shit. You're an asshole. Would you give me up? You're going to give me up? And he's like, well, I literally just told you what's going down, so clearly I wouldn't give you up.
You have a spy? Do we have a spy in my house? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It might as well have been just you and me in any of our arguments that we've had over the past 20 years. So it was fascinating to watch. But I also love when he like threw Benthic through two tubes under the bus of trying to say he was a spy, because I don't know what it is about that design and that character, but from the moment he showed up in Rogue One and he's been in some of the Star Wars comics, I would not fuck with him.
No.
I don't fuck with him.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest with you. When I saw him this time around, I was like, I'd like to have a series with this guy, like small.
He's great.
5-10 minute episodes, kind of detailing his background. That'd be great. Yeah.
Star Wars is obviously well known for all of its characters and all its aliens and all the creature effects and everything. And like every once in a while, they just have one that I couldn't tell you why.
Yeah.
I couldn't say what it is, but they knock it out of the park. And from the moment he showed the first shot that he was in on Rogue One, I was like, that guy's great. And then you see that he keeps coming back. So clearly, like he was like he's a character that really just something about that design really works. Literally loved the conversation between Luthen and Clea. Like we're talking about an artifact, but the artifact is Cassian Andor. Like, I just eat that shit up. And then everything Shannon said about the action sequence, 100%. It was perfect vintage Star Wars. Everything about it. The Empire coming in, the false codes, the tractor beam, and the fact that the weapon was shrapnel. Like, I was talking to somebody earlier about it and they didn't get it. They thought that they were like missiles, and I was like, no. He caused them to push the tractor beam up to be stronger and then hurled metal into space, and the tractor beam did the work for him.
Yeah.
It's fucking brilliant. Like, it was just a great, great scene. And Shannon's right. For the fact that this isn't the most action-heavy Star Wars show, we don't have tons of space battles and dogfights in space and everything. What they do give us is A+ material.
Yeah. Laura, thoughts on this? How Luthen went down? Where do you side on this back and forth between him and Saw? And What do you think about how the interactions there with Clea and then the Imperial officer?
Well, I think Shannon had the theory that Clea might be like taking over for Luthen at some point if we don't bring Luthen back, and I kind of like that theory actually.
Yeah.
I like the character Clea a lot, and that actress really has not been in much. I think she's got 3 credits on her IMDb, including this, and I would love to see more of her in this role because I think it works really well. Her conversation in particular with Vel was so interesting to watch and rewatch again, because the way that they are framing these 2 actresses in these scenes, it's like straight out of The Crown's playbook.
Yeah.
Like where they're like sort of facing each other head on, but it's 2 different. It's awesome. And I mean, Benjamin Caron directed this episode. He also, I think he directed 10 episodes of The Crown too.
Yeah.
So that it makes sense, but it just immediately reminded me of that show. With Luthen and Saw, I don't have a ton to add, but one thing that struck me with this whole sort of long game of letting the Empire take Krieger out is this really is like the Empire for adults. Like, you think of like Star Wars Rebels and like try to imagine like Ahsoka Tano or Hera Syndulla doing that, like leaving a whole squadron behind to just let the Empire, like it would not for 1 second ever happen. And this Andor series, you know, they're upfront about it. This is a reality of war, and there isn't even a full-blown war happening yet. That like Rebellion hasn't fully organized to be the adversary that it eventually becomes yet. So we're not even there. But the fact that the show is just so real about it, it's just interesting to see the different takes and the different ways that Star Wars frames it in their different shows. Luthen shooting like the shit out of his ship backwards to destroy the tractor beam, amazing. However, was that a missed opportunity to use buzz droids to bring them back? I would have liked to have seen.
You are a prequel girl through and through, my lady. Pulling out the buzz droids.
That could have been real interesting. That's a good, excellent point. Do you think he was mocking him or not mocking him when he said "for the greater good"?
I don't think he was mocking him.
Okay.
Right. I will, but I mean, to Rocha, to your point, and to
he's
the whole
my spirit animal.
I
feel like I know what he was doing, but all right, go ahead.
Yeah, a crazy paranoid person who isolates himself, and everyone is like, "What is he doing?" Oh,
San Diego's nice. You should come visit. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
What I do like about it, though, is, and to the point that we've had this debate, and you feel the way you feel about it, and we feel like. Yeah. They're not taking it lightly. It's not like Luthen said in an episode was like, all right, well, we got to give him up. That's the smart thing. And then they left it go, and that was what happened. Like, Luthen making the decision to choose Lonnie as the ISB spy over Krieger last week, and then this week having to inform Saw about it, and Saw challenging him and him talking about it. And even the fact that they asked Bix if Krieger was Axis, they're clearly building it up. So like I said, like I don't think that the finale is just Ferrix. I think that this whole Krieger going in or not going in and Saw Gerrera doing what he does about, like, I think that it's going to be a big thing, and it might be a big thing where Krieger makes it out and is pissed at Luthen. Luthen does something that sacrifices himself. Saw Gerrera comes in and saves the day. Saw Gerrera comes in and fucks things up. But whatever it is, this idea of sacrificing 31 men or 31 rebels for the greater good is clearly not just a throwaway thing. Like, they're building it into this is the reality of things, and this is, and even like with, I know we're gonna get to the Mon Mothma stuff in a minute, but that the rebellion, you don't get to be like, hey, I want to go fight the biggest evil superpower in the galaxy. This is going to be easy.
Yeah.
There are huge sacrifices that have to be made. And like I said earlier, whether that's losing a loved one because they die when you're not around, sacrificing 30 people, marrying your daughter off to a mobster, like, take your pick.
Yeah.
Being in the rebellion sucks.
Yeah. Right now it's pretty tough. That's for sure. We'll see what happens. And I'm kind of in the camp with you all. I feel like Stellan Skarsgård is not going to make it out next week. The way they're laying the groundwork of the decisions that he's making, and they are hard decisions, but they also can rub you the wrong way on the outside, maybe setting up for him to take the fall. Plus, he's a very in-demand actor, and would he be able to come back and do another 12 episodes.
I mean,
Who knows? But so
someone's got to run around naked at Stonehenge in the MCU. Like he got shit to do, man.
He's got the monopoly on that. So
yeah, that's for sure. But Clea is her sliding in, perfect. And we'll see if Vel or Cinta or both, see if they make it out next week as well. We'll get into predictions in a little bit. But let's take a quick break and we'll jump into our last two storylines here in our last section of the show right after this. Very inspirational. I like that one. All right, Mon Mothma. We hear some chanting going on at Mon Mothma's place. We're not sure what this is just yet, but in my mind, I already started fearing the worst of what this might be. I thought it was Perrin having some weird-ass meeting with his fellows from the Elk Lodge, but it was not that. Vel walks in, and we see that they are just, what is it, the Stonecutters from The Simpsons? Yeah, but anyway, they walk in, and they discuss that Lita is the one in there chanting, and we see them all wearing these kind of ritual robes, and it feels very religious or cult-like, but it is from Chandrila. Mon says that it was Lita who found the elder who was leading them in the chant, and this is all Lita's doing. In fact, it's the only thing she shows up on time for, and that Perrin apparently has no issue with it, so they're both kind of in this camp. Vel is shocked about this and is not a fan of it because certainly she's probably been through it, and so I imagine has Mon Mothma when she was younger. And Vel wants to know if Mon Mothma is not taking suitors for later. She wants to make sure that's not happening. But then we cut to them later having a conversation, kind of where her and Tay Colma were having the conversation. I think her and Dabo Skulden had the conversation in that room as well, talking about how much trouble that she's in. She's talking about the situation and how she was pulling out $100,000 a month to give to Luthen as a part of this situation. And they talk about Tay Colma, who Vel brings up, which is really interesting, and how Aldhani froze everyone's asset. The Aldhani caper froze everyone's assets. And you see Vel register that with a little bit of guilt on her face, not giving too much away, but certainly affected by what Mon Mothma is saying. So it indirectly affected her for sure. Vel wants to know if Luthen knows, and Mon Mothma says, who knows? I don't know. He knows so much. He knows so little. I don't know what he knows. And Mon Mothma, through tears or holding back tears, tells her that she has found a solution. And we see that Vel is asking these questions, at least in my interpretation. Vel is asking these questions because I think she's considering pulling that $400,000 out of the money from the Aldhani caper to give to Mon Mothma. So this whole situation with Leta and Devil Skulden doesn't happen, but we shall see. Leta comes out before we go further in the scene. She hugs Vel, but she makes sure to give her mom the meanest look after she while she's hugging Vel. So that's the end of that stuff here. I'll go to you, Laura, first on this one. What are your thoughts as you're watching Mon Mothma navigate this scene and navigate what's happening here with Lita, and then also having the conversation with Vel?
It's so fascinating watching Genevieve O'Reilly in this show because she's like she's working so hard, I feel like, to like keep her face neutral, but like she's teary-eyed, and she's like, just the way that she's playing this character who is a senator who is also playing a character is just, it's just really fun to watch, and she's doing such a great job of it. And I'm so glad that we know that that character lives, so that we're not fearing for her over the next the next season of this show. The chant stuff is so weird and so creepy, but I'm all for cult stuff and Star Wars. And the fact that like Mon Mothma makes a point to be like, I thought all this was over, or Vel thought it was over, and Mon's like, no, it's back, and then it's stronger here than it is at home. I'm just like, oh, but like what is it? Like, I want to know more. I'm interested in knowing more. But yeah, I mean, the fact that Vel is just boosted 80 million credits or whatever it is from the Empire, I'm like, and she clearly has such a close, loving relationship with Lita. I would be willing to bet that she would probably dip into some of that if she's got any access to it at all, just to prevent this sort of proposed betrothal for Lita and this other character. But I'll be interesting to see where it goes. It'll be interesting to see what Mon Mothma's role is in the finale, especially concerning Lita. I mean, like, how is Lita going to react to this proposition? And how is Mon Mothma going to react to Lita reacting? And how is the real Mon Mothma versus the politician Mon Mothma? It's all just, I'm looking forward to seeing how her story ends up playing out.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, your thoughts on the Mon Mothma stuff here in this episode?
I mean, it's all fucked up, man. Like, it's like... Well, I mean, because it's like introducing the idea that her daughter is down for a prearranged marriage. In a way, seems like it's like, oh, well, we made this too easy for Mon Mothma. But it doesn't really. It just kind of makes it more icky. Like, she straight up was like, I'm not even going to consider this last week. And, the dude was like, that's the first thing you said that was untrue. Like, she's really stuck. And she says as much to Vel. She's like, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
I'm really fucked. And there is a way out, but it's horrible. But the fact that Lita is into this whole, like, all of the, most of what they're saying about being bound. And so it sounds very much like in Chandrila, part of the religion and part of what Lita's sort of glommed onto is that women are taking a much more sort of traditional role as a subservient kind of role in a marriage kind of thing. And just being open to an arranged marriage makes it like, well, it gives Mon Mothma the opening, but even so, doing a prearranged marriage with your daughter to the son of a gangster, is so just gross that if she does it, it further drives a wedge between her and her daughter. You really remember that scene early on in the season where we never really got the full info, but it sounded like Mon Mothma wanted to drive Lita to school or something. Yeah. And she was like, you only really want to do this so that it looks like you care. And now it's like, oh, the way that she would have to handle this is like, oh, well, I know that this is what you're really into, so I went ahead and did this for you, and like putting on the mask of like, I did this for a noble reason, but really it's such a dirty, horrible reason. Like it just compromises her just as much as it compromises Luthen to sacrifice 31 people.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, just in a different shade. So watching her sort of struggle through this and seeing where she comes out on the other end. Maybe Vel does come in and save the day in the 11th hour so she doesn't have to do it, but maybe she comes really close and that affects her and that like steals her resolve to never do that again. Like, no idea where it's all gonna land next week, but watching her sort of struggle through the morality of this decision is really fascinating.
Yeah, agreed. Shannon, your thoughts on what we got here from the Mothma story, but also Genevieve O'Reilly's performance?
Genevieve O'Reilly, just the restrained performance that she is doing is fantastic. I mean, it's something Diego Luna does really well as well. It's the saying a lot with very little. And it's something that, is not an easy skill. I mean, it is something that some people are just kind of born with, but it's also for folks like me, you really have to cultivate because the temptation to go, here's what I'm feeling is very much there sometimes with really good writing. Like you're like, oh, I can't wait to play this. And the best way to play some of that really great writing, that Tony Gilroy writing, is to underplay it as best as you can. Yeah. To add another layer, because it sure does seem like Mon Mothma is going to marry her daughter off to Davos Golden Sun. The fact that he is a solve for this particular issue. Yeah. But also when push comes to shove with the Empire, having someone who already operates outside of the law with very deep pockets is a very good resource. So even though it's like I am potentially damning my child to a terrible life, but I could be helping out the galaxy. It's a really interesting moral position to put Mon Mothma in. And it's something that Genevieve O'Reilly is playing really well, because I mean, I definitely had the sense, as you all did, that Vel's kind of like, kind of doing the tabulations in her head, like, all right, 400,000. How much did we steal? We stole this much. Cassian took this much. How much can I do? What can I do to bail my family out of this terrible problem that they find themselves in? It's a really interesting, again, a real interesting moral dilemma that is not, at least in the in what we've seen on screen, is not the norm for Star Wars.
Yeah, and I think they've done an excellent job of removing the easy route, which is her reaching out to Luthen going, I need 400,000. I'm in a bad situation. What can you do, right? By having Luthen distracted by all the other things, by having her questioning what side he's on, what he knows, what he doesn't know, so she doesn't fully trust him, she's got questions about him as well because, as Luthen showed us in this episode, he'll throw 2 tubes under a bus. He'll throw anybody under a bus to save his ass or save his plans overall for the greater good and all of that. So we see that happening. So why would you trust him? Why would you trust him to tell him these kinds of things? And Shannon,
you would be horrible at running a rebellion.
Oh, I'd be really good. Yeah, I'd be really good at leading not being the politician. I'd be good at leading it on the ground. You stay out there in the rich areas. I'm going to be handling things on the ground.
I'm going to be in the trenches, in the mud.
Yeah, yeah. But no, at this age, shit. Listen, yeah, but the thing you bring up here makes me think of the greater good as well, because is she going to sacrifice her daughter for the greater good? What, as Michael brought up earlier, the idea of sacrifice, so is this going to happen? And, at the beginning of this series, I don't know if I would have believed it, but the brutal, gritty reality of this series where we've seen these things, these sacrifices being made and some of the really unsavory stuff being spoken about, it's very possible. And that kind of unsettles me a little bit, and we'll see how that affects Mon Mothma. Because I was rewatching some scenes from Rogue One. You can tell Genevieve's playing. Of course, how do they know that Andor is coming? They don't know, but like her portrayal is a much more, I don't know. There's stuff that's happened to her, and you can tell in her performance. And I wonder if they're weaving this back in a kind of retrofit to fit that kind of performance that she had in Rogue One. I don't know, but I like what's happening here, and she's just a star. Like, I don't know how she's not showing up in all kinds of stuff right now. Yeah, it's really weird. We'll see. Let's move on to the next storyline here real quick. We're not going to do any break here because that's enough of that. Syril Karn, Syril's mom Syril's mom gets a call, tells him it's for him. As Michael mentioned, the bedhead. It's Sergeant Musk. This is so cool. I loved this call. As a guy who's old enough to remember when you used to call long distance to another country, this is in essence what you're seeing is an old school long distance call from like the 1980s or 1990s, where you're only picking up a few words. You're hoping you're getting the intention across. Stuff's getting in the way, and you're dropping the call, picking the call back up. It's madness. But we hear that Musk is working there and working the night shift at some kind of smelting factory or whatever. And he tells him that he has found this information from some people who are working there, still connected to what's going on in Ferrix, that Maarva has died, and that they think that Cassian is going back. And so Syril gets at least a piece of that information, and his mom says something snarky at the end there. Later we cut to his mom leaving the apartment. He is all dressed up like he was when he goes to work. He is waiting for her to pass by, sneaks back into his apartment. Is that his private box that he's opening, or his safe or whatever? Takes some stuff out and then sneaks on out. So, Michael, take it away, my man. What do you think about all this with Syril, and what's happening with him in this episode?
Between his mom's bedhead and what's his face from the Batman on that call, like how they made this like the most comedic scene in the episode. Oh, so like good. He's like, "Oh, it's smelting. Hold on. Yep, that's it. Yep, it's the mom. Like, genius. The guy is such. He is every right-wing moron on Twitter embodied in one Star Wars character in a way that is so ridiculous and humorous to me. But yeah, I mean, they did just such a great job. I'm really curious, I'm so curious about the Syril Deidre of it all, because obviously, Deidre is very invested in what's happening at this funeral. Syril is headed to the funeral. And is this going to be the moment that Syril fucks things up so bad that Deidre's like, yeah, I'm done with you? Or does Syril actually have a moment where he does something that is bad for Cassian, but actually really good? And Deidre's like, all right, fuck, I guess I gotta put up with my stalker. Like, I don't know. Like how this is gonna land, I'm just super fascinated by, because like I think I said when they did it, like the Syril as Deidre's stalker bit, like did not see that coming, not on my Andor bingo card. And so how that wraps up into all the other stuff that they're weaving together, completely fascinated by.
Yeah. What is it? What would be their name together? Right?
Deidre.
There
you go.
Carnero? I don't know. Laura Kelly.
I like both of those, actually.
It's not as good as Raylo. Raylo's good. What are your thoughts on this on what we're getting from Syril here in this episode and his mom's bedhead, for God's sakes.
I hate Syril Karn. I still hate him, and I to the point where I like basically didn't take any notes on this section of the episode. I don't want to see that fucker's face on the screen again unless Deidre's with him.
Ooh.
I want more of them together.
Like
I just want to see
together?
that. I don't care. I just want to
okay.
see it play out and see where it leads. I don't know. Should I say it? I'll ship it. I'll ship the two of them.
Yeah, I'll ship the two.
I'm gonna be loud and proud about it. I do ship them because I thought that their one scene together was awesome, and I just want to see more of whatever the hell that was.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way she would fall in love. I feel like not the stalker aspect of it all, but he is so overt about it. You know, I don't know. It might wear her down.
I mean,
a little bit.
you
I'm not
guys-
saying it's not an overall judgment on this is how you should do this. For this situation between these two people who are clearly evil and have shit they need to work out, that I think it would take an army of therapists to figure out. Them coming together makes sense, right? So what are you gonna say, Michael?
Syril knows what Luthen looks like, right? Or at least his voice. Like he basically says to her when he's in ISB that he would be able to identify Luthen's voice.
Good call. That could come
And giving Deidre access, that's like the best Valentine's Day present he could give her. it really. Now you guys, like everything you guys were saying about Luthen's not gonna make it, and I was like, oh God, like even worse than Luthen not making it, particularly because we know that there's a time jump into season 2, would be Syril getting the girl by giving her access, and then we cut forward to however many years later, and Luthen is still alive but being tortured by ISB. Like this could go down real dark, you guys.
Well, they each take a side of the thing of the helmet as they slide it onto. Oh, it could be very just unsettling. Shannon, your thoughts on the whole thing with Syril, and please regale us with your thoughts on his mom's bedhead.
Well, I mean, the moment that Cyril's mom pops up, I don't know how many of our audience watched Arrested Development, but I'm like, oh, this is Jessica Lucas right now. This is Lucille Bluth with Gangi. I mean, after the chemical peel, like I mean, I hollered this morning at 7 as I was watching this over my protein cereal. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so funny. And then as Syril is trying to talk to Sergeant Moss, and she's in the background. She is one heartbeat away from getting on the other line to listen.
Oh no,
and you see him kind of waving her off. The unintentional humor of this scene is so fantastic. This is the type of thing. I mean, again, I love that this is a series, and this is like this is what I get to watch. This is my Wednesday morning cartoon, essentially. But to watch this in a theater with a crowd of people, I feel like this scene would have torn the roof off the place because it was just so funny. Yeah. And then, I mean, that was not his special box. That was his mom's jewelry drawer.
Okay,
he's going into his mommy's jewelry drawer to get cash. So I mean, and I think that lines perfectly up with his character that he waits for mom to leave to go run her errands, and then he's going to go into her hope chest and take out the cash he needs to get to go on this trip. It's so funny how much Laura hates Syril. This is the character I would have wanted to have played. I'm like, I think this guy is fascinating. He's just, I mean, again, I fully acknowledge what a weasel this guy is, but I think it would have been so fun to play. And I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah, he's got to have a significant part of the finale. They've kind of sidelined him after making such a big deal to establish him in the first 3 episodes. It would be weird if he doesn't in some way play a big part in that finale. For sure.
I mean, there's one of two fates: he ends up in an Imperial uniform, or he's under the ground.
Yeah, fair. There's an Imperial marriage is possible as well.
I mean, this is really it stresses me out now because we know that Cassian is gonna be Cassian. He's gonna be a part of the rebellion. He's gonna do what he does. But Luthen, I got a bad feeling about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. And for those of you who don't know, don't watch Arrested Development. This is what Shannon was referencing. That's a terrible bad head.
Oh my God.
In life, you don't want to have that in life. Anyway, all right. Let's real quick before we wrap up. Let's get into predictions. Mike, I'll start with you first. What do you think's gonna happen? Any final words on this episode? Please.
Like I said, this has been such a fun ride for Star Wars. I mean, I love The Mandalorian. I love both seasons of The Mandalorian. Boba Fett, very hit or miss. Obi-Wan Kenobi, some real high highs and some questionable moments. Not a perfect ride altogether. And Andor has just been such a wonderfully subtle and powerful and interesting ride that is so different for Star Wars, but feels like it fits right in so many ways. And I just love how it's expanded the universe. As for next week, Ferrix is mad as hell and can't take it anymore, I think. And I think I feel like, and I don't know for sure, but I feel like we're gonna get a Ferrix uprising around Maarva's funeral, and we're also going to wrap up this Anton Krieger storyline in whatever way we do. And because we know that there's a time jump, I think we're going to see Cassian take his first steps into like finally being a part of the rebellion, maybe because of Luthen's death as well as his mom's death. Yeah. We're going to see Syril do something, again, like I said, maybe surrounding Luthen, maybe something else that's going to drive him into it. And so I think we're going to kind of catch up with a lot of these characters years later and see where the events of what happened on Ferrix or with Krieger's kind of issue over there propel them into higher levels of both the rebellion and the Empire.
Okay. Laura Kelly, final thoughts on this episode and what you think we might see next week?
Not a whole lot else to say on this episode. I mean, I did not as good, I think, as 10, but I'm overall been very satisfied with the latter half of the season of this show so far. Obviously, the first half didn't do a whole lot for me, so I'm glad that it's on the up and up for me. Predictions. Will we finally see Mon Mothma and Cassian's stories link up? They're kind of the last holdout, the last storyline that hasn't like crossed over yet. I'm thinking no, because I don't know how they'd have time for it, but who knows? We were told that K2SO is not going to appear in season 1, but like, what if it was a surprise? What if he did? What if it was just like a little hint of him or something? I don't know. Or some other cool cameo. We haven't seen Bail Organa yet in this show, which is a little bit surprising. In terms of who is not going to survive, I agree Luthen is a likely candidate. I think Bix or Brasso, this whole season has sort of been about radicalizing Cassian. And now his mother is dead. He's been through this whole prison ordeal. And one of those two during this uprising going out, especially if they go out like saving him, that's going to push him over the edge. And then I don't think this is actually going to happen, but like, what if Syril Karn dies and I never have to see his stupid face ever again? But in all seriousness, the Empire does not care about its little worker bees, and everybody, if he dies, then it's going to be obvious to Deidre that the Empire does not care about their worker bees. And I think it might affect her more than she would have thought.
Damn, Laura. Damn, Laura. That is good.
Just an idea.
That's a great idea. Shannon, your final thoughts on this episode and what you think's happening next week? God bless, that's great.
I mean, I love the fact that Disney is releasing some episodes on ABC, FX, Hulu, and Freeform. They know that they have a terrific show that just doesn't have enough eyeballs on it right now. They're releasing the first 2 episodes. I really wish they would release the first 3 because I feel like that first arc is really what you need to get you into the show. But yeah, I don't think Luthen is long for this world. I think that angry Imperial officer that he shredded his sonar dish. I think he's coming. There's a reckoning a coming. And I think, much to Laura's dismay, I think Syril makes it. But we'll see.
Yeah. I've got Vel or Cinta, one of them going out next week. I don't know which one.
Cinta's gonna cut your throat just for saying that.
Probably. I just have a feeling because Vel's been kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? She's felt unmoored a little bit because she has such a love for Cinta, but Cinta isn't returning the love in the same level that Vel has. But Vel's got a different dedication to the rebellion at this point than Mon Mothma has. So there's an inconsistency going around, and I don't know where she's going to land. So I think that makes it a possible candidate that she goes out, maybe even trying to save Cinta. She goes out because she loves her so much, and we'll see how that plays out. Laura's it's got me all messed up in my head now thinking that's a possibility because I'd love to cheer for Deidre. I'd love to feel.
And now we're going to be disappointed if it doesn't happen. This is the danger in making predictions. So I don't know. You just got to let it go.
Yeah,
I also just love the timing of this all. That usually I watch Andor on Wednesday morning. And then I have to dive into work and I have to get stuff done. I have to do writing, I have to plan your stuff. I love that this is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I feel like I'm watching Andor. I'm going to be like, oh yeah, that was amazing. And now I do nothing for the entire, Thanksgiving. Let's eat the turkey. It's good timing. Good timing, Star Wars.
Well, we might have a review. I'm just throwing it out there. But yes,
that will happen. But spending time with you guys is what I'm thankful for.
Yeah, it's for the greater good. I don't think Luthen is getting out of here either. Is there anyone else? Oh, it may be Lyda and Perrin. There's a possibility with whatever they're setting up. Maybe that's them dying because without them attached to Mon Mothma, we can see her progression in the second season much more freely without the constraints. And that may be what kind of changes her opinion about how much harder she needs to be a part of the rebellion and really needs to take it over. I don't know. So just
she don't care about that guy.
Wait, fair enough.
We'll say her daughter.
But if something happens to B2,
oh no,
I'm gonna flip a table.
That's right. I'll flip a Thanksgiving table. What's the other one that I wanted? Oh Jesus, I just forgot it because Michael threw it in there. I'm old, I forget things. Anyway, all right. Anybody else that we didn't talk about? No. All right, fine. No, it's not coming to me. Oh, no, I think Davos Skulden, I don't think you renege on a deal with Davos Skulden. If this turns around, that could be an interesting situation with Mon Mothma to deal with next season. And I don't think you cast Richard Delane, who is, by the way, the brother of Stephen Delane, Stannis Baratheon. You don't cast him and not use him more going forward. Right. So I just have a feeling there's more to come from that in that situation. So, all right, well, there you go. That's our spoiler review for episode 11 of Andor. Thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate whether you're listening on the podcast or watching us on the Outlaw Nation channel. We appreciate it madly. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's at geek_buddies, on Instagram at _geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung, on Instagram, it's Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you would like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is at MK2, and if you would like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is at The Rocha Says.
Mikey?
If you think sacrificing 31 rebels is an act of war or just for the greater good, we welcome all opinions here, and we want to hear what you guys have to say. And here's what you guys can do to help us keep doing what we do. Definitely hit the like button below, subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page, check out all the content, leave your comments below. What did you think of this episode? What are your predictions for the finale? What are your predictions for season 2? Where do you want to see Cassian Andor go next? If you are listening to us on the podcast, go ahead and leave us some stars, leave us some comments, helps us go up in the rankings so more people can find us. And as always, the best thing that you can do is retweet this video, send it to your friends, post it on your socials, and tell them all to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
There you go. And of course, big shout out to Laura Kelly, who has joined us and back to hang out with the 2 episodes for the finale. Laura, please tell people where they can find you and everything that's going on.
Sure, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at shutup_Laura. I am lucky enough to join the Geek Buddies for a lot of Star Wars discussions, so you can find me on their channel here and there. And this week, John and I did a review of the first half of The Crown, season 5. The Netflix series has a new cast, and we are loving it. And so you can also find me and John talking about Star Wars right here on his channel on the Jedi Way. And you can find my podcast, Force Toast, a Star Wars Happy Hour, on all major podcast platforms.
Absolutely. And of course, big shout out to, we will be doing episodes 6 through 10 at some point this week, hopefully, to wrap up our review of The Crown, but we are loving it. Definitely, y'all should watch that season for sure. And please watch our review, which hasn't even broken 1,000. So come on, people, watch the review. It's good. And big shout out to carbonhealth.com, who powers and sponsors us here on the Geek Buddies. Head on over there if any of your healthcare questions, concerns, or needs, or download the app to have a doc in your pocket for when you have those concerns on the go. Whether you're in Ferrix or in the Spell House station, you're going to need it. All right. Take care of yourselves. Be well. And we'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review episode here from the
Geek
Buddies
and Laura Kelly.
Hey!